Crack 'em, boys. Hawks Happy Hour. Four Feathers Podcast. We're back live. That was a good round of crack'ems there, boys. Very appropriate for a Hawks Happy Hour here. Welcome in Four Feathers Podcast, brought to you by On Tap Sports Set. I'm Johnny Nani. Ron Luce, to my right. Tony Marchese will love me there. Boys, how we doing this evening?
Not too bad, Johnny. Tis the season for everybody fighting head colds and chest colds and all of that. But we're fighting through it to get a little Hawks happy hour in on this Tuesday evening. So I'm doing good, boys. It's good to see you guys again.
Johnny, good to see you. I know that we've been talking a lot of White Sox baseball lately over on Sox on Tap, and it's almost that time of year where Ron departs over to the Cubs on Tap side of the house, and it's good to be back here talking a little hockey as the season winds down, guys.
Yeah.
I enjoy these happy hours.
So do I. I love this time frame here. It's great because it's kind of you're like getting off work and then you're like ready to like get into sports for the night. And the Hawks play tonight, so I figured this is a good time to do it as we're coming down the home stretch of the season. Hence the title of this episode, home stretch of the Blackhawks season. I wanted to call this because, boys, I came to a realization that looking at the schedule, there's only 6 games left, and I'm going to miss the hell out of hockey when it's like mid-July. And sure, it'll be great to have baseball in warm weather and all of that shit, but don't get me wrong, hockey's still my favorite, and it's the greatest game in the world, and I'm gonna miss it. So there's a little background for why we're doing some Hawks happy hour today.
Yeah, missing it is something I've been thinking a little bit about lately too, Johnny, because unfortunately I haven't been able to catch as much Blackhawks hockey as I would personally like. So what did I do in order to compensate for that? I went and impulse buy 2 tickets to the last game of the season. So that was a good move.
Yes, Ron. Applause all around. I'm gonna be there. It's gonna be a party. Yes, and yeah, we will talk about what could potentially go on there. But yes, now I think we got to make it a date since that's a thing we do on this show. Tony, I think you got to join in on that too.
I was already planning on potentially making an impulse purchase to the last game of the season, and I think despite you guys both being there, I think as a Hawks fan, and I tweeted about this the other day, it could be Jonathan Toews' last game in a Chicago Blackhawks uniform. So I'm going to do my best to make it down to the UC on that specific date with you guys. And yeah, we could try and make this a date here.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. We've done that. We've successfully done that, I think, 3 times on the show so far in just this season, and then many a time in the past. So looking forward to it, especially one last time, the last opportunity to do it. I knew they do have technically 2 more home games that Monday night against Minnesota, I believe, is another one there too. But we'll get to the rest of the slate in a little bit. Tony brought up an important name there. That's Jonathan Toews. Makes a surprise return. So we got to hear reactions on Jonathan Toews being back, Ron.
Yeah, I think just the quick one is a little bit of a sigh of relief. It seems like, he's not totally done, which is nice to see. I know everybody's been bugging him about, are you going to retire and all this, and he's not ready to make that decision, and that's a good sign. Even if it is the end of his tenure in a Blackhawks uniform at the conclusion of this season, it would be nice to see Jonathan Toews still play hockey for a few more years. It's truly a pleasure getting to see one of the greatest to put on the Hawks sweater. Continue to, just be healthy for his own sake, and, be healthy for his playing career sake as well. So it's good to see him back, and got on the score sheet right away. That's just classic Jonathan Toews, and it's really good to see him back, healthy and on the ice, Johnny.
I'll chime in here too. I think it's a little too early to know whether or not Jonathan Toews is going to actually hang him up. That said, we've already done this once with Patrick Kane this season. And had to go through sort of the heartbreak of watching a Blackhawks great don another uniform. Selfishly, I don't know if I'm ready for Jonathan Toews to go do that on top of Kaner being gone and having to go through free agent rumors of both Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane signing with other teams throughout the offseason. That just kind of feels like unnecessary daggers that we shouldn't really have to endure right now, but I get why we're going through it. But personally, I don't really want to fucking watch that, if I'm being honest with you guys, just as a Hawks fan. I don't know if I want to watch that. Maybe there's a place for Jonathan Toews to come back on a 1-2 year deal with the Chicago Blackhawks. GM Ron has said many a times that they're going to need to sign free agents, and they're going to have to get to, cap floor, Ron? I'm not sure what you've determined yet that number is, but
it's enough.
It's enough. it's enough to get Jonathan Toews back here. I think it would be enough to get Patrick Kane back here. Not expecting either of those guys to come back, but I'm just gearing myself up for, a lot of disappointment through this offseason and having to cover some unpleasant things to cover on the show as well as in written form over at ontapsportsnet.com.
Yeah, you bring up a good point there, Tony. We kind of went through the ringer with it, right? With trade rumors, and I know it. I will say it did get kind of squished on the Taves front there with the illness that he was dealing with, so that kind of took him out of the mix. But my God, we heard about Patrick Kane every single day since the beginning of the season. Shit, even in free agency last summer, possible trades scenarios being talked about, bandied about ever since then. So we kind of went through that, and then having to do that in the free agent cycle there too, Tony. I think you bring up a good point that it's like, man, they're just like had enough of it. Like, can't we just focus on our prospects here and rebuilding and doing all of that? But hey, for Jonathan Toews being back, Ron, you'd mentioned it, scores in his first game. That was excellent. Getting him back there on a Saturday night in front of the United Center crowd, he said, felt the roar. And it's something that, you try to be locked in for the game because you're focused on a task at hand, right? But he's like, it's hard to, not notice the crowd, and especially adding the meeting in of him, coming out and saying that these, he's coming to the realization that these could possibly be his last, days in a Blackhawks jersey. So it was great to see him back. I was surprised, definitely, with the timing of it. I thought it was going to be cutting it close and down to the wire because I knew we had this road trip coming up, and I was like, if he's not ready yet, is he really going to go on a road trip and jump in the middle of one of those? And it's like, no, it probably just makes sense for him to stay back and continue doing what he was doing there, and then try to gear up for that last Minnesota one and the very last one of the year at home there. But I was happy that he was back nonetheless, and then absolutely great assist to Andreas Athanasiou in that one. He just put it right on the doorstep, and all AA had to do was stick his damn stick out there, and it was in the net. So that's classic vintage Jonathan Toews. And one last thing I'll add on him is, hey, a good captain goes down with the ship, right? We had talked about it, and we said that after he was the only one remaining after the trade deadline, right after Domi went, after Patrick Kane's there. And so, Jonathan Toews, the captain, going down with the ship, but it was kind of a little hollow, right? Because he wasn't actually playing. Now that's actually in full effect here. And, the feels are starting to set in.
Set in indeed, Johnny. It's just feels more real day by day. And I think it really echoes how much this summer is just going to be weird, right? Like Tony had mentioned just a bit ago here. We're probably going to hear a lot about these two names in free agency rumors, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're coming back to Chicago. And just knowing that and kind of turning the page and everything that comes along with it, you can definitely feel it coming. So it felt like a proper time to get the old Jonathan Toews jersey out for this one.
Yeah, I see, Ron, you're very festive and prepared for it, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a reason Ron's wearing the C jersey here. And that's definitely because I thought that most of this show, I know that we've got other topics, we were going to center a lot on Jonathan Toews and the remaining schedule here, guys. We talked about that, or you guys actually talked about this in the first show that we had this season, reasons to watch the Blackhawks. And right now, really, as it comes down to the wire, he is the number one reason to watch the Chicago Blackhawks. And sort of like we saw with Patrick Kane before his departure, I expect him to sort of do what you saw in game one from him, and that's get on the score sheet and sort of play with that little extra edge. He's geared up. If he is going to play next season, he's playing for a contract. He's playing for, that next deal. He's going to prove himself. And also there's going to be some heightened emotion with, it potentially being his final few games in Chicago. So I'm expecting to see and hear a lot of Jonathan Toews talk over the next week or two. And then, as we head into the offseason, he's going to be, the center of attention here in Blackhawks hockey land when it comes to, is he retiring? Is he going to be a free agent? And where is he going to sign? There's a lot of things that comes with all of that. And as I said before on the last go around here, I don't think I'm ready to have to do this all over again with Jonathan Toews. And you're going to have Patrick Kane's name enter the mix again as a free agent at the end of this season too. So the one thing that really sort of gets me was on Patrick Kane's departure, the use of it was the closing of Patrick's chapter in Chicago that I believe came from Danny Wirtz. And I'm wondering what the language is going to be at the end of the Toews era here. It sort of has felt like the Blackhawks have gone out of their way to remove any semblance of the Cup teams from their marketing campaign, from the Blackhawks' existence at that point. I'm just curious to see how this all goes down, because it could be a potential rocky road that we're about to embark on.
Right. Yeah. I think it'll be interesting how the Hawks handle it from a PR standpoint. But one thing that made me think of, Tony, is that the Blackhawks, when obviously they have to do this because it's in season, especially. But with when Patrick Kane was traded and all the signage around the United Center was changed, right? That anything that really featured him, you got the Chevy Drive Chicago ads that had to be changed, stuff like that. So that's understandable because that's in season. You can't, realistically feature a player that's no longer there and playing for another team in the league actively at the, in terms of your team marketing there. Who the hell do you put up in these spots here? Seth Jones,
does not move the needle for me at all. I'll just
jump out and say is there anyone else that is worthy of banners?
Lucas Reichel, maybe.
Yeah, right. Okay, there's one. Taylor Radish,
maybe. There's a lot of maybes.
I think they're not household names, though, guys.
Are the casuals going to know who those guys are when they say they're coming on the escalator at the UC and they look up there? Who the hell's that guy?
Who's that guy? Well, I mean, if, we've talked about the idea of maybe like a Max Domi returning this offseason. I think, again, just kind of echoing what I said a little bit earlier, I think that's why this offseason is going to be such a critical one, not just from, what's your product on the ice and what's the direction, and do they, get some pieces that really accelerate this rebuild. It's going to be finding faces of the franchise and guys that you can even just market this team to. Again, the casual fan that doesn't dial in for 82 games a season, who's going to be that face? Because like you guys both said, is Seth Jones really a guy that's going to attract people to the United Center? Probably not. Maybe Max Domi helps with that a little bit. I think Lucas Reichel, given his late play, could be another name.
You said that, and I just had a light bulb moment. And Max Domi taking that stick to the face in one of his last games when we played at San Jose. Remember that? And he's up in arms with the bench. That grin that he had after with the teeth knocked out and stuff. That might be one of the most marketable images for the rebuild that they could possibly have. And that would be a reason to re-sign Max Domi.
Hashtag ready to work.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, I really do think you're going to see a lot of that in the terms of what happens. And I think that, and if you don't mind, Johnny, I'm going to display a comment from our friend I Am Scocks here. He says, I believe our new face of the franchise will be chosen in this year's draft. And guys, entering this show, I kind of had that hunch myself of, to me, it's whomever they get at the top of the draft and Lucas Reichel that you're really pushing as your product next year, because he's been good. I know, this Blackhawks team has been losing. They're doing everything right for the tank for Bedard sweepstakes, but you have to be happy with what Lucas Reichel has done so far in this short window with the Blackhawks. I mean, just 20 games, but 11 points. I mean, he's been productive, and you've seen these moments in highlights where he goes to make a great play and you're like, if he just had a little more talented of a line mate with him in that instance, maybe that results in a goal. And I think that based on what happens at the draft and the continued, strong play of Reichel down the stretch here in these final 6 games, I almost think you, in a lot of ways, as the Blackhawks, have to go out and get some guys. And, you're going to get your 1-year deal guys that you're just fillers, and it is what it is. But guys, I think they're legitimately going to go look for some guys to pair with their 2 young, studs as a part of this tandem to really try and sell this team of why people should come to the United Center and see them play hockey. Because to your guys' points, I don't think Seth Jones alone moves the needle enough for, the casual fan to show up to the United Center on a Monday night in January.
Yeah. Right. I absolutely agree, Ron. And one of those names you mentioned, Lucas Reichel. Let's get it right here on the Four Feathers podcast. It's Lucas Rockstar. And I think the Blackhawks marketing department could learn something from the Four Feathers podcast in that department. Tell this kid to have a personality. I know he's like maybe a little soft spoken and all that, but feature anything he does, any of his big reactions, all of that. Feature it prominently. Paste it all over and say, look how damn good at this kid is at moving the puck on the power play and how it set up this chance or how he was able to finish this feed. And, anything that comes with his speed,
That
roaming
would
up the
take Pat
ice.
Foley and Eddie Olczyk to
How
actually
he
explain it, Johnny.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. But you know what I'm getting at here, right? Use his rock star moments, and then that's a nickname that we can use here. And we'll take it at the Four Feathers podcast. So catch us raving about Lucas Rockstar here. But once again, that's something that Blackhawks could look to in terms of you want to get people interested in this rebuild. Well, guess what? He's the face that is here right now. And I know, like Skokes mentioned very well, face of the franchise will hopefully be drafted in this upcoming draft. But right now, you got to work with what you can. And that would be my advice in that direction.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head, Johnny. I mean, you gotta work with what you have, and unfortunately, at this time of the rebuild, you gotta amplify the bright spots on this team. And I agree with you. It is no longer Lucas Reichel. It is Lucas Rockstar, and show off his personality. Again, there's a reason that people fell in love with those cup teams. Remember all the content and crazy things they did with the players and the commercials, and all the crazy videos they would make, like the crazy colored on the um like the cyclist commercials and
Yeah.
stuff, like
Yeah.
that gave the players personality, and that's why people are drawn to them. I think despite this current ownership group of the Blackhawks trying to erase some of the negativity that is now unfortunately attached to that cup run, I think they could still learn a lot from how this team marketed themselves into becoming Chicago's darling, really, for a 10-year stretch of time. And that's certainly one of them, is making sure people understand these guys just aren't players with numbers on their backs. They're real humans, and they're people that'll a lot of us can identify with and admire and enjoy seeing them show that personality, especially at the forefront of this rebuild. And another guy that they should do it with is Coach Richardson. Get him in the forefront too. Everybody fell in love with Quenneville. Who's to say they can't all fall in love with Richardson too? I mean, we're obviously big
They
fans
should.
of him. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're fans with him, here at Four Feathers. It's time for the rest of the fan base to truly get to know the guy that's behind the bench, and probably is going to be behind the bench for a very long time for the Blackhawks if he keeps doing what he's doing.
Yeah, right. I think that's a good point there. All right, let's talk about some of those guys really quick that could potentially be, part of that movement here in terms of building up next stars of Chicago. Wave of prospect signings as of late, with junior and college seasons coming to an end. Blackhawks had a handful. Wyatt Kaiser obviously has been in some game action, coming down from Minnesota, playing directly here. Minnesota Duluth there, and then Ryder Rolston out of Notre Dame, Paul Ludwinski, Gavin Hayes, Antti Sorella. Don't think I'm missing anyone there, but that's kind of that new wave here. Ron, there was a guy that was just signed recently that came out. You wrote something up about it on tapsportsnet.com. So tell us a little bit about Gavin Hayes.
Yeah, Hayes took a really nice jump in year two, Johnny, in the OHL, plays for the Flint Firebirds up in Flint, Michigan. And year one, he was a big bodied winger that clearly the front office liked something. They used one of the draft picks they acquired in the Kirby Doc trade, and selected him in the third round, 66 overall in this previous year's draft. And he just improved. He got better, improved his assist numbers by 10, which you might think, oh, that's not that substantial. But to go from 19 goals to 41 goals in your sophomore campaign in the OHL certainly says that there was some development done. Because of the CHL transfer rules, he will have to play next season back in the OHL with the Firebirds, or if he is traded within the OHL, which we see on plenty of occasions, especially with guys that are eventually going to be leaving for the NHL anyway. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I don't think he's good enough right now to make the team outright, and that would be the only way we would see him next year. Otherwise, he's going back to Flint. But seems to be probably the signing, in my opinion, Johnny, outside of maybe the Kaiser signing, just because we've gotten a little bit of a taste of him at the NHL level. That really gets me excited, just because of that scoring prowess and what he brings, because we've seen it with the Kachuk edition and the Radish edition and some of these other guys that Davidson tends to enjoy at the wing spot that are big and can score. Hayes seems to fit that profile pretty well.
Yeah, I was most impressed when I just go and peruse the Hockey DB page a little bit, and I saw 41 for the point total in last season, and then you go and jump that, and he's over that, right? What was it, 41 goals in this past season? And then he obviously added like 40 like assists with that too, right?
Yep.
So that's a big jump, like you had mentioned there. So that's really what caught my eye with Gavin Hayes. So glad you highlighted him there. So be interesting to see with those, but we always get a wave of these with the end of these junior and college seasons, and it's just more notable now, given the Blackhawks are where they are in terms of state of the rebuild. So,
And speaking of that really quick, Johnny, too, a notable name that hasn't signed with the Blackhawks, they announced they're returning for their senior year to their university, is Landon Slaggert from Notre Dame. He was a third-round pick a handful of years ago, has drawn a lot of notoriety in the World Junior tournaments for Team USA. Most notably, I believe this past season wore an A with the University of Notre Dame. A guy that admittedly I'm going to keep my eye on and praying that all the reports come out that it's just a Dylan Sakura situation where, yeah, he's going to sign. It just he's returning for his senior year because he's really starting to turn into a player at the collegiate level that I think can make a big difference for the Blackhawks going forward. He fits the Kyle Davidson, Luke Richardson mold of hockey. It would be a real shame to lose him to the August 15th deadline free agency, come a year from now because he decides he wants to go elsewhere. So hopefully that's a guy to keep an eye on as a Blackhawks fan this coming year that, his dad's on the coaching staff, his brother's still at Notre Dame. Yeah. So reasons why he probably wanted to go back, but just hope for those reports that come out throughout the season that say, yeah, I'm signing with Chicago once our season's over at Notre Dame.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Good to know on that front. All right. Let's move into the home stretch of the season, guys. Only 6 games left, including one tonight at Calgary at the start of a 3-game West Coast swing. Another one in Vancouver, I believe. Seattle is the other stop on this trip here. So what are we looking for on this home stretch of the season?
I'm just looking for them to continue to play hard, but lose games. Kind of the brand of Blackhawks hockey that we've really seen down the stretch. They're not getting their doors blown off by anybody. They're still staying competitive within games. They just are clearly an under-talented roster compared to their opponents. And, looking at this upcoming schedule, guys, I mean, there's maybe the game against Vancouver. I mean, don't ask. Tonight could honestly be a win because they, for some reason, have a lot of success against the Calgary Flames in the last 2 seasons, and I don't entirely understand why. But, they maybe can squeak out a win against Vancouver, but you have playoff, aspiration-filled teams in Seattle and Minnesota and Pittsburgh all coming up down the stretch here, and then obviously the Flyers to close out the season. So, more Lucas Rockstar highlights, more Taylor Radish highlights, more improvement from the youngsters down the stretch here, but keep losing games. And then we root for ping pong balls from now until the lottery in, I believe it's early May, that we'll be rooting for the ping pong balls until then. And then once we know, then we can start keeping our eyes looking forward and looking toward the end of June draft.
I just want 1 or 2 more exciting Blackhawks victories that they've sprinkled out through the season. I don't expect a large win streak down the stretch here. I think that might be kind of
careful what you wish for, Tony.
Kind of detrimental. I enjoy watching this team win. Johnny, I'm done.
You'll enjoy Connor Bedard much more.
Yeah, but I've gone on tankathon.com too much and run the simulation, and we wind up in 3rd, 4th, 5th each time.
So
and
Blackhawks mirror has got you all hot and bothered.
Yeah, I'd just rather just see them win at this point, and the ping pong balls will do what the ping pong balls do. I don't know. I want to see Jonathan Toews go out with sort of a bang here. Even if that's them losing, I want it to be honorable and respectful, and not just a complete shit show disaster.
That's an absolutely great point, and I will second on that one. The second thing you said there with Jonathan Toews, they cannot be playing absolute shit games here, because then it almost feels like a waste of why did he even do this to his body to come back, really. But I think the assist was a good start, seeing that. And I will give them credit against that Devils team that can be a high-flying offense there. They kept it fairly close on that Saturday night game. I know it opened up a little bit at the end there, but hey, for the most part, that was in the 3rd period, and Toews assist that set up Athanasiu's goal pulled him within 1 there. So keeping with that style of play hard, and just play these teams competitively, even though if you're so talent wise outmatched. That's the key for me there as well. What I'll be watching down the home stretch with this Blackhawks team. But guys, it was funny seeing Toews quote today that Ben Pope put out, and he was talking about coming out west, and it reminded him of the circus trip that they used to have, and I just it was like a blast from the past. I don't know if you guys remember, like in high school, like staying up, like watching those games late, like around like Thanksgiving week. It's like you're already checked out of school because you don't give a shit, and you got a few days coming off. You'll be off of school anyway in a few days, and it's like, all right, well, who cares if I like barely sleep at all tonight because I'm gonna stay up and watch this exciting at the time Blackhawks team.
Yeah, the circus trip was always a fun one because it was literally just that same time every year. And there was always that Black Friday game that was played at like 1:00 on the West Coast. So it was like a 3:00 in the afternoon game for Chicagoans, and you were off school anyway, so it was a perfect time to just kick back and watch some afternoon hockey, and then hang out with your buddies on Friday night. And at that time, like you said, Johnny, talk about usually a Blackhawks win. So I always remember, don't ask me why, but I feel like more consistently than not that Thanksgiving or like pre-Thanksgiving game, or the two that were right after Thanksgiving, it was like always LA and Anaheim every single freaking time.
Yep.
Every single time. And so I think that's what really sticks out to me, but you nailed it, Johnny. They were meaningful games at the time.
Yeah, it has to be LA because I remember when John Scott punched Kevin Westgarth's face into the boards, and you could see the blood. There was a great photographer right there, so he took a picture of it, and you could see the blood spattering off of Westgarth's nose and going into the into the boards, and that was just I just vivid memories from the circus trip. So Jonathan Toews saying just those two words today, it gave me just a absolute catapult into the past.
Circus trips were fun. I love that Ron brought up the 3:00 game. That was probably his favorite, Johnny, even though I know you and I were probably up until, the wee hours of the morning watching.
My favorite was
the Hawks. Ron was a good student. He got to bed on time.
My favorite was a 10:30 that would start up in Edmonton or in San Jose, or that was it. Because then, like I said, who cares? I don't care about school tomorrow. I'll be late for first period. I don't care.
We don't come to play school.
Yeah. We came here to watch hockey. All right, boys, we're about to wrap up Hawks Happy Hour here. It's great jumping on, talking some Hawks with you as the season winds down. One last question for you. Outside of host tonight, because I think that's the easy one. What's been your favorite moment this season for the Blackhawks?
Oh, well, I'm probably going to have a different one than you guys, because unfortunately you guys were there for what would have been my favorite had I been in attendance for it. I think it's really, really easy and safe to probably say the home opener. I mean, that game was just such an up and down experience. They're losing going into the third. They rally back, force OT, and then Domi snipes it top shelf to walk off the hated Detroit Red Wings. And to walk out of that building laughing at all the Red Wings fans that were in attendance was so sweet and satisfying. I don't want to take the thunder, but I think I know you guys know where I'm leaning with what's truly the walk-off moment, in my opinion, of the season is probably a highlight as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head here, Ron. There's no other moment that I can pick than being in attendance there with Johnny for Patrick Kane's last ride. That goal still counted in my mind and forever will. Yeah, wow, what a moment it was to be at the UC for that, and I will never forget that one, Johnny.
Yeah, I mean I wish it counts in our minds, but I really wish that would have counted for real. The OT clapper as time expired buzzer beater for his last home game. That would have been incredible. So Tony, I mean that has to be up there. But for sake of going elsewhere, Ron, you had another good one too. I like the home opener. I was there as well. That was a blast too. But man, our Tankathon. I think Tankathon, Tank Center, excuse me. The Four Feathers Tank Center was an absolute blast covering that with you guys. And I know we didn't have a whole lot of flurry of activity there. But man, all the stuff leading up to it and all the trades, Kyle Davidson seemed to be pulling one out of his hat every other hour for a while. So it was a frenzy. It was a lot of work to cover all of it, but I'm glad we did, and I'm glad we had a lot of fun with it. So I think that was probably one of my favorite Blackhawks moments of the season, outside of the two that you mentioned, and then the qualifier that I took out with Hossa night, because I mean, demigod Marian Hossa over my shoulder here. You see the mini banner hanging there, so that's there for a reason, guys. It's been great talking Hawks with you here on the Four Feathers podcast with Hawks Happy Hour. Puck drop 8:00 tonight, I believe, out in Calgary. So once again, my last message for Blackhawks fans: lock in for these last 6 games and enjoy it, because sure, you're probably just wanting to check Tankathon, and there's some of you that, you know, it's so beyond watching this hockey, but just remember that you wasted those. If that's the route that you decide to go, remember that you wasted those when you're missing it and you're getting the itch for hockey when the draft rolls around and free agency starts and signings start going everywhere. And it doesn't matter if they're bad. You just want your team to be back in action, right? At that time in the summer. That's at least how I always feel. So that's why we called this Hawks Happy Hour today. Appreciate everyone that tuned in. Until next time, let's go Hawks.
Let's go Hawks.
Let's go Hawks, baby.